Astros trade deadline takeaways. You wrote Jim Crane cements his title as baseball's most aggressive owner. Can you elaborate on that one?
First off, I want to give a shout out to Tyler Stafford and Josh Reddick, who ran Crush City territory today solo. Excellent job by both of them. Please go rate, review. Please like and watch that. They did a great job. Yeah, it's difficult to call Jim Crane anything else other than the most aggressive. Notice I said most aggressive owner at the trade deadline. Look, AJ Preller, Jerry Dipoto, they obviously get their flowers as guys that wheel and deal a bunch, but no owner is quite like Jim Crane, a guy that when he has somebody that he wants, when he has identified players as I want this guy, 9 times out of 10, the Astros get them. You look at Justin Verlander in 2017, again in 2023. We had Jeff Luno on Crush City territory a couple of weeks ago, and he basically said that Jim Crane was a huge factor in getting Zach Greinke in 2019. Remember, too, that the Astros had a deal agreed upon to acquire Bryce Harper from the Nationals in 2018 that was nixed by Nationals ownership. And then also bear in mind that at the 2023 deadline, Jim Crane came out and said, we tried to acquire 2 players from the Padres. It was Blake Snell and Josh Hader. They couldn't get on the same page, ended up pivoting to Verlander. Who did Jim Crane and Dana Brown sign the next winter? Josh Hader. So, look, if Jim Crane sees that the Astros, his team has a legitimate shot at a championship, he breaks all precedent. He kind of loosens his restrictions, if you will, on money and the luxury tax, things of that nature, and he goes for it. And you have to commend him for that as an owner that is this aggressive, as an owner that prioritizes winning this much, and an owner that sometimes just says, you know what? Screw it. We're going for it. We're going all in. We're pushing our chips all in. That's what this team did. That's what he did at the deadline. The Astros needed a jolt. They needed some energy in their clubhouse. They had lost 12 of 19 going into the deadline. Their lineup has just been ravaged by injury. And, there were other hitters out there that maybe made more fiscal sense. There were hitters out there that maybe fit the lineup a little bit better, but no one has the cachet, no one has the star power, and no one can bring a jolt to the city of Houston and the Astros clubhouse like Carlos Correa.
Well, that's my next question. Jim Crane just loves stars, doesn't he? He loves stars.
Yeah.
Carlos Correa is a star. And we had Bob Nightingale earlier who said this was a this was a Pohlad and Jim Crane trade. GMs were be damned. This was a Pohlad and Jim Crane trade that was done between the two involving all the money. So how much of that is true, and why does Jim Crane love stars so much? I mean, it's amazing. He loves collecting them.
I mean, you'd have to ask Jim why he loves stars so much, but I think a little bit of it is, stars are more, there's a little more assurance there. There's a little more guarantee that these stars are going to come in and perform well. You don't know how getting a guy from maybe an uneasy situation, or a guy that's never been in the spotlight, a guy that's never been in kind of the pressure cooker that is when you come into an Astros clubhouse that expects to contend for the World Series every year. There's a lot of pressure there, and there's people that are meant to handle that. There's people that, as Dana Brown likes to say, have the stomach for it. Carlos Correa is certainly one of those guys. Justin Verlander, as we know, is one of those guys. Bryce Harper would have been and still is in 2018. Zach Greinke got them to within, I believe, 8 outs of a World Series in 2019. So that's part of it. Look, Jim Crane had a huge hand in this. Dan Hayes and I at The Athletic, when this started to simmer on Wednesday, we wrote a story that basically said, look, there were sources from both the Twins side and the Astros side that were really downplaying this as a possibility. It could happen, but it's very, very unlikely to happen. But every Astros person that I kept talking to, there was just kind of this inherent understanding with them. They would say everything and they'd be like, but, Jim's involved, and Jim is usually, when Jim Crane has his eyes on something, 9 times out of 10, he gets it. And I trust Bob implicitly. I do believe that it was a lot of, Jim Crane to the Pohlads there in Minnesota. I think that is true, and that is the case. Because with the amount of money you're talking about here, with the amount of money that the Twins are paying, with the amount of money that the Astros are taking on, that's an ownership level decision. That would have been the case in 29, 28 other teams too. Like, ownership would have had to get involved. So, but make no mistake, this Jim Crane's influence in this deal was massive.
The word you used was jolt that Carlos Correa is going to bring to this team. You look at his stats right now. Is there going to be a jolt? I get it. You can have clubhouse guys, but you know what clubhouse guys get paid? They get paid what I got paid. It's a half a year thing. It's under, you don't have 2 commas in your paychecks. Jim Crane's a very successful businessman, and successful businessmen do not waste their money. Is there a chance they see something that maybe could be unlocked, especially with moving to third base and maybe getting him off his feet? I'm assuming they know what his foot injury was. Is there something there, or is it just a complete roll of the dice for 70-some million dollars?
Well, first of all, Kratz, you've shared a clubhouse with Correa. You know the influence and the impact just his presence has. Like sometimes he doesn't even need to speak. It's just his aura and his being there. It just kind of alters the way a clubhouse functions. He's a guy that can team with Jose Altuve and really be, the leaders of this clubhouse. When he left in 2021, he was the unquestioned leader of the Astros clubhouse, vocally, presence-wise. Sometimes he didn't even need to speak, but a lot of times he did use his words and was the leader. So that'll help. I do worry. Not worry. Worry is probably the wrong word. I do find it fascinating to look at his stats because, look, this isn't the same Carlos Correa that left here in 2021. I believe he was worth 10.4 WAR in his Minnesota Twins tenure. He had 2 separate seasons with the Astros worth 7 WAR. So this is a player that has, on paper, declined. I have not watched Carlos play a bunch since he left, so I can't tell you specifically it's this, and this. Some of it has been injury related. He had the oblique issue earlier in his Twins career. He's had some foot issues. He had some plantar fasciitis issues. Part of it is he's got to stay on the field. Part of it, too, I have no doubts that he'll transition to third base and be absolutely excellent there. The one thing that has never fallen off is his defense. Like he's one of the better defensive shortstops I've ever seen. I think that'll be a seamless kind of transition, him going to third base. And who knows, maybe there's something there like there was with Jose Altuve when Jose Altuve moved to left field in spring training. I think I've told you guys before that this is the most engaged and the most happy and energetic I've ever seen Jose Altuve in the 8 years I've covered him. That position switch kind of energized him. Maybe that can be the case for Correa, even though it's only moving over a few feet on the left side of the infield. Maybe that can be the case. He has said that he wanted to play third base. He had talked to the Twins about doing that, but their roster construction just never lent itself to playing third base. So third base is not the worry for me. What I would worry about a little bit is the offensive numbers. The slug has not been there. Recently, you look at, he's been susceptible to sliders. The batting average is still around a 260, 270 hitter, but just has not provided the thump that they need. But if this lineup gets at full strength, then you have Jeremy Pena and Yordan Alvarez back and Jose Altuve, who's having a nice year, and then Jake Myers, who's hitting 300. If he can come back, you look at it, and he doesn't really have to be this 1,000 OPS guy that's going to carry the lineup. He'll be surrounded by some pretty good pieces there, but that's a big if the Astros get back to full strength.
All right, not to discourage or to say what you said was wrong, but a -2 outs above average. Maybe his fielding range is third base increases that. I get what you're saying. The aura factory, it makes my kids cringe when I say that. But you're in Fenway right now. Mm-hmm. 2 teams are going to play against each other that did not do anything to take care of their starting pitching needs. Who's in a worse spot, the Astros or the Red Sox with their starting pitching? And where are the Astros at with their starting pitching because they didn't get ceased? They thought that was going to get pushed across the finish line.
Yeah, as far as the Astros go, they're going to have to hope and pray that Christian Javier and JP France and Spencer Arrighetti and Luis Garcia, they come back. And look, it seems now they are going to get all 4 of those guys back. They are going to activate them off the injured list at some point, and they're going to be on a major league mound. The question is their efficiency. Christian Javier hasn't pitched in a major league game in 13 months. Luis Garcia hasn't pitched in a major league game in 27 months. Spencer Arrighetti is probably the more sure thing out of these 4 guys because he did pitch some this season, and he's not coming back from reconstructive elbow surgery or a long thing. He just broke his thumb on his right hand. Not that that's a nothing injury, but certainly not to the level that Javier, France, and Garcia have been through. So they've looked okay. Most of them have looked okay in their minor league rehab starts. But, it's a different animal at the big league level. And they're going to have to roll the dice here that these guys are ready to get out at the big league level. Dana Brown was asked yesterday why they didn't acquire pitching, and it was the answer was pretty simple. The prices were just too high. In lieu of trading away some of either the 0 to 3 controllable talent they have or some of their precious few top prospects, Jim Crane decided to take on the money, take on Carlos Correa's money, and that allowed them to keep a lot of their controllable talent and their prospects in the system. They were very hard after Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease was their primary target throughout this deadline until the Carlos Correa stuff really started to pop up. So the fact that they went so hard after Dylan Cease does kind of reaffirm that there is at least some worry about what these injured guys are going to come back and provide. But look, they're in a good spot with the top 2 guys in their rotation. Hunter Brown's going tonight, and he hasn't been as dominant in his last 4 or 5 starts. I think tonight is a pretty crucial start for him just to see if he can get back on track and get deeper into the games. Pitch efficiency has been a problem for him lately. Framber Valdez has been incredible the last 2 or 3 months. You kind of pencil him in as a guy you're going to get 6 or 7 innings out of every time they go out there. They feel comfortable with those 2 guys. They feel comfortable with setup man Brian Abreu. Obviously, Josh Hader at the back end has done great work, but everything behind that, there's a lot of question marks, and it's proof that with how hard they were pushing for Dylan Cease, that they know that this could go awry a little bit. I'm not saying it will, but they're putting a lot of confidence in some injured guys that have not been on a major league mound in a while to come back in a pressure-filled situation in a race for the division and get outs and get them deep into games. And that's a dangerous gamble to wage.
Chandler, last one. Let's grade it. Just give us a grade for their trade deadline. Did you do one for The Athletic?
I didn't do one myself. I'd probably give them a B plus. Look, we haven't talked about Jesus Sanchez yet. I think that's probably the biggest acquisition. Like, obviously, Carlos Correa is Carlos Correa. We're going to put him to the side for a minute, but functionally for their roster, getting Jesus Sanchez was massive. This is a lineup that has taken the fewest at bats against left-handed pitching all season. This is a lineup that is very, very right-handed. Jesus Sanchez comes in and he has something like an 814 OPS against right-handed pitching. He hits left-handed, will bring balance to their lineup while Yordan Alvarez is out, will continue to bring it once he's back. And I think more importantly, they can spell Cam Smith now in right field, because as we've watched Cam Smith really since the All-Star break, it looks like the rookie wall is approaching for him. If he's not hit it already, he's coming dangerously close to hitting it. He's up toward a workload and a threshold that he's never played before. He's never played this much. So they can now maybe put him in a semi-platoon situation, start Sanchez against a bunch of right-handed pitching, bring Cam back against some lefties. I don't think it's going to be a strict platoon in that way, but this will help Cam Smith out a bunch. It will help, managers not avoid managers just unleashing all their right-handed pitching on this all right-handed lineup. It'll give them some second thoughts as to how they deploy their pitching staff. But, I think that was a pickup that went under the radar because of what happened with Correa. But I do think because they didn't address the rotation or the bullpen, because they didn't get at least some pitching help, I would have to give it a B plus. But all in all, a good deadline for Dana Brown and the Astros.